In this tutorial, we're going to talk about using layers to place objects on your page. Now, we don't have a lot on the page right now. We just have our bleed markers, and then we've got one text frame right here. But as you go on, you're going to be adding more and more objects onto the page, and the reason we go with layers as a tool in design applications is because you want to be able to lock objects so that you're not constantly selecting them, especially background objects. And when you lock a layer, you can't edit it. So that means you won't have to worry about clicking on something and getting the wrong item all the time on the page. The other reason you use layers is to be able to view and remove them. So like these bleed markers, we're not going to want to see them all the time, only when we're putting objects onto the page. At some point we're going to want to make them go away so that we can get a preview and a sense of what the page is going to look like when it's finished. So I've got my layers utility open here, and I'm going to start by just seeing what I have on the page. So I've got all of these bleed markers. Why don't we rename this layer that everything's on currently bleed marks. Okay, and we're going to then add a layer because we want a layer for the background, probably. And I should say, one way you can figure out how to come up with the number of layers you're going to need is to take a look at something like the logo, for instance, which I'm going to pull up right now. There it is. So if you look at this image, the still that I have here, we've got one layer for the background, and this sort of embellishment is also probably included in that background layer, as is this square that everything sits on top of. Then you've got another layer for the cookie that's in the picture, for that image. And then you've got a third layer for the text because the text is going to sit on top of the image. So we're going to have probably a layer for background. Let's make another one. We're going to need one for text. And we're going to need one for image. Okay, so right now, all of our stuff is in this bleed marks layer. So I'm going to send this one to the text layer. So I'm going to put all my text frames in that layer when I'm making new text frames. So the way to keep your workflow organized when you're doing this is to click into the layer that you want to be editing, and then when you're going to make a new object of that type, make sure that you're clicked into that layer, or that you have, you can lock all of the other layers using this lock icon, and that way you can't click on anything and edit it. See, I'm on the bleed marks layer, but I can't actually click on that object. If I unlock it, then I can click on this again. But I'm on the bleed marks layer, so if I want to edit the text, I go back to the text layer. It seems a little complicated, but trust me, once you get, 20, 40, 150 objects onto the page, it can get kind of confusing, especially once you start putting background tiles and colors all over the page. You want to have the ability to only edit stuff that you're working on currently. So that's how layers helps you keep things separate. So if I'm going to make a new text box, let's say we can make a new one for, I think it's simple Ricks. So I'm going to put, oops, CK apostrophe S, and then let's edit this in the text frame. We'll make this Birds of Paradise. To get to that text frame, I just did Control-T. We'll talk more about the text frame in another tutorial. Let's see. Come on now, where is it? Birds of Paradise, there we go. And then I'll update that frame and close it. And then let's see. Where did I have the font set at for this? 128. So let's go ahead and change the font on this. we'll make it 128. And then I think for the color, I have that royal purple here, I believe. Okay, so now we're on the text frame, or the text layer. If I want to, I can click on lock, and then I can't edit that even when I'm clicked onto that layer in the list of layers. And then if you want to see what it looks like without the text, you can click on that little human eye icon, check that box, and that'll take the text layer out of the picture. So if we wanted to get rid of those bleed marks, for instance, we just click on this checkbox underneath the eye glyph, and that'll take those out for us, and that'll give us a more realistic look of what the page is going to look like without those marks and bleeds and all of that stuff. So I believe that's it for layers. As you go, you can add more layers into your document. I don't think there's a limit as to how many you can have, but it does have diminishing returns after a while. Once you get 10, 15, 20 layers, it becomes just as confusing as if you had no layers at all. So I usually try to shoot for somewhere around 4 or 5 layers. That helps you keep straight all of the different objects you have on the page. And as we continue to work through the example, you'll see those layers really are an advantage, especially once you get the background elements on the page, and you need to make sure that you're only clicking on stuff that's in the figure, not in the ground of the design. So that's the end of this tutorial.